The Miami Dolphins are getting ready for a critical test in Week 9 against the Bills, but not for the reasons you think. We're exploring why here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL draft lead for the 33rd team. Special shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today on the show, we are exploring why Week 9 is, for me, actually important for the Dolphins. And it's not for the case to get back to 3-5 and put yourself in the playoff conversation for a wild card. No. I don't want to hear the talk about it from the players. If you want to be about it, be about it. And I think that is one reason why this is a game I'm looking forward to. I want to know who's got the dog at this stage in the season. I want to watch and be able to tell who's still interested in being out there, who's playing with pride, who is not going to fold up shop. And fans, it's a different story, right? Because you're not going out there suiting up. It's not your career. It's a rooting interest for you. But for guys who are playing for their livelihoods and playing with a competitive edge to be the best versions of themselves, this is the evaluation period, right? And it's a divisional opponent against a good football team. You got to go to their place. They've kicked your butt pretty much every time they played you the last 3 years. Who's going to show up? I want to know who's going to show up, because the guys that show up are the guys that are going to get the green check mark next to their name as we work our way every game the rest of the season. I'm looking for every player on the roster. Are you passing the 1-2 test? And this, if you can't get up for this one as a player who has pride, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you if you can't get up for this one. But there's a number of reasons why I think the evaluation of this team, not the result of this team. And I know Dolphins fans, it's been almost 3 decades. We don't want to hear about the process anymore, right? And I get it. But for me personally, covering the team, I do have a process of evaluating the team to determine the right buttons to push when the time comes, since the team apparently is very resigned to not pushing any buttons in season for the accountability of the shortcomings that we've seen thus far from the team. So my process involves looking for signs of growth, looking for growth that has happened to see if it's sustainable, looking for self-awareness in what you're doing. That's where this game, for me, I'm excited for the game. I'm not excited for the final result and a potential win, because I'm not expecting a win. And if you win, great. We'll have a good time. We'll light the sign up here behind me. I've rearranged the camera here in my office with the intent of, after wins, we'd have a whole ceremony and light the logo in the background. Well, it's been 3 weeks and we haven't lit the logo yet. so much for that idea. But that's not why I'm excited. I'm excited, and I know this is what makes me like a sick, twisted football mind as compared to a fan. It's like, yeah, I want you to go out there and win by 4 touchdowns. And like, yeah, that'd be cool. Realistically speaking, if that's my standard for pleasure in watching the game, spoiler alert, I'm going to be let down on Sunday at 4:00. That's just the way it is, especially this season. So for me, it's like, okay, this is an opportunity to get some high resolution clarity on 53 question marks on the roster, and however many question marks in the coaching staff, and however many question marks from football operations. You can get a really high resolution picture. Because, for example, I want to see some growth from the game script. And the game script that Mike has always played against the Bills, you get the impression he feels he needs to score 34 points. And there's going for it on 4th down, near midfield, and not punting the ball, even if the defense is playing well. And what that ultimately leads to is a turnover on downs and then an explosive run for a touchdown. And you gave them the ball near the 50-yard line, and they proceed to go and score a touchdown one play later. And that entire exchange went kaput, up in smoke, as compared to making them drive the full length of the field and betting on your defense to make stops. Or alternatively, you're in a 2-minute offense situation. And this, I think, came back and bit the Dolphins again against Arizona. You knew Arizona was getting the ball to start the half, so we get all weird and wonky, and this was the case in the Buffalo game in week 2. Your offensive, you take over in the final 4 minutes offensively, and you have a chance to go down and try to get some points, and you leave points on the field. You probably leave points on the field by clock management towards the end of the half, and you get all weird about, I don't want to score too soon and give them back the ball and give them a chance to go down and get more points. And you did that against the Colts, and they ended up scoring points anyway. That's actually 3 games where you had the ball in the final couple minutes and you were in plus territory. And the clock management in all of those situations was like, you guys bled 40 seconds here trying to get this thing down, and it really narrowed your scope. They had a chance to get a first down. You had a chance to get a first down against Buffalo. You settled for 3 points. You had a chance against Arizona to get a first down, and you settled for 3 points. You had a chance against Indianapolis to get a first down, and you settled for 3 points. And I know, like, you called plays to try to get first downs against Indianapolis and Buffalo, but you didn't get them. And the clock management in the meantime, you're giving away time. Is it more valuable to just get the 3 and call it a day, or is it more valuable to do your best effort, regardless of clock management, to get 7 and risk with an extra 20 seconds they have a chance to go down and get 3? I'm not a math major, but I know if you do get the 7 points, 4 is more than 3. And 4 versus 3 net point difference in the pass game against Arizona would have probably helped you a little bit when you lose by a point. Right? So against this team, with how Mike has always called games against this team, I'm excited. I'm not excited for the result, but I'm excited to assess and get a snapshot picture of how they choose to handle it versus how they've always chose to handle it, as an area that, as you evaluate, you need to see growth with evaluation in order to feel good about continuing on the path with something. It's a good growth opportunity for the Dolphins, separate of result. Show me good process, regardless of result, because that's what the evaluation has to be about, is about the process. Because if it's results oriented, then everybody who's a fan is emotionally tapped out with the team, and they're going to have negative emotions about the team. And I get that. I understand why everybody feels that way. To some degree, I feel that way. But you try to be as objectively realistic and rooted as you can without the emotion when it comes time to the full evaluation. Now, speaking of the full evaluation, the offensive line has had a nice little stretch. We're going to get into that here next on Locked On Dolphins, and why this game against Buffalo is actually a very important one. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Listen up, renters. If you've ever felt like you've been stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air, it's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month you pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on during vacations. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels at properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards future rent payments. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points towards your rent payments today. The offensive line, don't look now. it has been an area for the Dolphins that has scored particularly well. And I understand, and that's why this week is an important week. I understand that the Patriots, the Colts without DeForest Buckner, and the Arizona Cardinals are not the best defensive fronts that you were going to face this season. But Buffalo's going to be up there. They're getting Von Miller back this week. They got A.J. Epinesa and Greg Rousseau on the edge. They got Ed Oliver's their top 10 pick and Daquan Jones at defensive tackle. Just as a point of note, the Buffalo game, the first game you played, by my scoring, was the second worst offensive line performance that you've had thus far this season, behind the Tennessee game. So you have, as an offensive line, stacked together 3 impressive performances back-to-back. The New England grade was sufficient. Lee Meikenberg had his second worst game of the season there by my grading. But the last 2 weeks at Indy and at Arizona, you've had 4 out of 5 guys score at or above expectation on a play-by-play basis based on the play design. Robert Jones has had his best stretch of football that he's played here in Miami. That's progress. I'll take progress. But now progress goes back to, what does it look like against Buffalo? And this is a team that structurally gives you 4-2-5 with a nickel that can play on the second level. They're not going to put a nose tackle in Aaron Brewer's face. So you would expect Aaron Brewer to have a good game, because when Aaron Brewer struggles the most, it's because he gets a nose tackle that's aligned directly over the top of him, and they cover up the guards. So you're isolated in one-on-one situations. You have the quickness that you have to deal with from Jones and Ed Oliver. How do the guards handle that? How does Robert Jones handle that when he's played better and showcased some ability to get up into space and anticipate and feel things better, pass things off? I'm really interested in what that looks like. Obviously, this is a redemption opportunity for Austin Jackson, who performed at a below expectation rate, played his worst game of the season the first time you played Buffalo. Well, you're probably going to get Von Miller again. Now, can you get into a more neutral game script and protect him from Von Miller blowing past him when they're up 3 touchdowns in the second half? I'd hope so. But that's to be determined. That's really dependent upon what we see from a game script perspective. But this offensive line, if you're going to say, well, they've played with X amount of continuity and it's allowed them to get better as a group and better as a unit than what they were in week 2, you expect to see those kinds of returns. And if that's what happens, then I think you can take that and feel as though it is a silver lining to move forward with for the rest of the season, that the gambit that they placed on the offensive line and continuity in the system and belief in the players that are there because they have more time on task and are playing next to each other as compared to how everything was interrupted all year last year, that can be a part of the procedural wins that you put in the win column as it pertains to this season, which has been a lot of bad and some good things that have individually happened to you as a team, but the bad has far outweighed the good, and the results are indicative of that. Indicative of that. I don't want any English majors coming at me in the comments. So I absolutely think this is a huge litmus test for an offensive line that, Lee Meikenberg is not trending in the right direction. And he was the worst graded offensive lineman that I had in week 8 against Arizona. But Aaron Brewer has played very well. Teron Armstead is playing like Teron Armstead. Austin Jackson had his best game in a month against Arizona. Robert Jones, like we said, his 3-week stretch that we've seen is probably as good of a stretch of games that he's played in quite some time for you. I want to see that continue against Buffalo. And if it does continue, hopefully that encourages Mike to call a game that is indicative of trusting your offensive line to stay on schedule with your runs. That's not to say you're going to have some minus runs. And a lot of that feeds into your tight end room, which had for my money, one of its worst games of the season I mean, Durham Smythe the last 3 weeks has been unplayable at tight end. And for the defense that I gave Julian Hill last week about like you guys are worried about the wrong things coming off the Indianapolis game, he was a problem against Arizona, sure enough. Some physical players, particularly LJ Collier, I feel like really gave him a hard time. Johnny Smith had a tough drop after 2 good receiving games consecutively for Miami. It was a tough drop that gave he had as a crosser underneath and an opportunity to get north and really get some good yards. So it's not to ensure you that you're going to run for 200 yards and you're going to beat Buffalo if the offensive line plays well. But I am looking at this as the litmus test to determine how much of what has seemed like it's been really stable after the Tennessee game for your offensive line play, how much of that is you, how much of that is the fronts you've played. This is the litmus test to help you evaluate what that answer is. And I'm excited for that. I'm not excited for the result because I have a feeling I know what it's going to be and we're not going to be happy about it. But I'm excited for more high resolution on a question that I have that is really going to be a defining variable about like, what the heck do we do when we hit the end of the season? Now, defensively, let's see what kind of self-awareness we have defensively. We're going to explain what that means and why I'm interested here next on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page is where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Right now, this game, actually, the line has trended in Miami's favor. Well, depending on where you look. The game total, I think, is an interesting number. It's over under 49.5. I think as long as the Dolphins don't turn the ball over a ton, I think you could take the under on that. Well, 50 points, I mean, that's up there. I think that's the second highest game total of the week behind only Dallas and Atlanta at 51.5. So the FanDuel Sportsbook is expecting a whole lot of points in this game, with the Bills favored by 6.5. So if any of that action feels like it's of interest to you, you can go to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make more money, and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is our latest call for accountability with this Dolphins team. The Dolphins, and you've seen them do a little bit of this over the last couple of weeks before the Arizona game. But David Long at linebacker is coming off of what I think is comfortably his worst performance as a member of the team in the last 2 years. And in spite of that, he played 97% of the defensive snaps against Arizona. And I don't know if that's Duke Riley. I don't know if that's Channing Tindall. It should be Anthony Walker, opposite of Jordan Brooks. But David, the past 2 weeks, played 50 and 68% of the snaps. Now he's out here for 97 and played a really tough football game. Like, did not play well. Actively hurt the team in more spots than one. So from my perspective, is there self-awareness of what is going wrong with your personnel? And if the answer is no, then I'd expect David Long's going to play 100% of the snaps again. But it's been like this since week 3. And there were miscommunications. I think he was at fault for some of the explosive runs against Jacksonville week 1, but he made up for it in other ways. It's been a lot of bad since Seattle for David. And Cam Smith, I'm interested in, does Cam Smith get another opportunity to play? I thought he showcased some really nice athletic skills that justify where he was picked, but looked like a player who had never really played meaningful NFL football before. And it cost you in some big spots in coverage and targets that Cam Smith got. But those two players, to me, I think were the biggest disappointments that the Dolphins had defensively in the Week 8 matchup against Arizona, and their contributions loomed large over the defensive collapse that you had in the second half of this football game. And it's a bummer that there was no adjustment from the Dolphins from a personnel perspective. And I get you didn't have Cater, right? So Cater, if he would have been in a position to play, would have given you a different option instead of Cam Smith. And it was kind of like, well, we're going to go out here and ride or die with Cam Smith. And if that's the way that this season is going to play out, then I think that tells you everything that you need to know. If you get into some of these spots and the decision is we get a young guy at this spot that hasn't played, he needs to play, and we're going to have to make it work, then why don't you do some of the trade deadline then? If you end up losing against Buffalo, I mean, that would be there'd be no reason at that point at 2-6 to not take the school of thought across the entire roster. So I'm really interested in can Cater go? What does Cater get from a workload perspective? Does Cam go straight back to the bench? Is there a rotation for David Long? We need to figure out what Zach Sealer's situation is. It's a good litmus test opportunity for Chop Robinson to face an opponent for the second time. What can he implement that he didn't implement the first time that these two teams played as a first-round pick that's playing a lot of snaps out of necessity? Self-awareness defensively, because you had some things that cost you last week and cost you football game defensively that could have been easily avoided. Maybe not easily avoided, but you could have done some different things. So that's what I want to see as you evaluate that side of the ball and the personnel on that side of the ball and their growth individually as players and the coaching staff and how they handle game planning and all of that. It's less for me about the result of the game. And if they manage to pull off an upset, heck yeah, we're going to be excited on Sunday that they've managed to pull off an upset. But I can still find the storylines that will be enlightening and will be telling us a story about this football team regardless. And we're going to explore some of those a little bit more tomorrow with Crossover Thursday with Joe Marino of Locked On Bills. You have that to look forward to here on the program. I am Kyle Krabs. You can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate all of you for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will be back again tomorrow.